Okay, guys, just a quick word from me. My name is Victoria. I'm from Europe Language Jobs. Quick disclaimer first. If you hear some background noise, me and Erika are in a construction site. So if you hear that, we apologize from the beginning. So as I said, my name is Victoria. I work here at Europe Language Jobs. Europe Language Jobs, for those of you who are not aware of our work, we are a career portal and we operate all over Europe. And our main priority is to give candidates with the languages that they speak, native or second languages. So if you don't know, here the free webinar that we're doing today is a part of a bigger event, the 30 days to get a job challenge that you can check on our website, it is europelanguagejobs.com. The whole event is about how to get a job from start to finish. We prepared content for you guys on every topic, from deciding for what job to go, to how to do your CV, to how to improve your LinkedIn profile. So feel free to check that out. And before I give the word to Erika to introduce the host, I just really want to thank our sponsors who made all of this happen. So those are Fujitsu, Saitel, WebHelp Portugal, WebHelp Spain, 5CA, TTEC, and Logical Recruitment. So thank you so much, guys, for making this happen. And now I give my word to Erika.
Thank you, Vicky. For those of you who weren't able to see her, actually, we are in the same office. You just had to scroll down a little bit and our mics are synchronizing, and that's what's happening. But yes, we're very, very excited to introduce our host, a very special host today, Eli Bohemond, speaking directly from the United States. We've worked with Eli in the past, and we just heard amazing things coming from him and what he has to teach and show you guys today. So Eli is an international career and leadership coach, but this is also not how he likes to be introduced. He's incredible, and I can't wait to hear this presentation. So we pass the word to you now.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, welcome everybody from all over the world. I really appreciate you taking time, your precious time, the limited commodity that you have to share with us here today to hopefully learn something important, learn something that you could take away and start using and apply almost immediately after this call. So to get the most out of this call, I would say, if unfortunately we all have these phones, I like to turn mine off and I'm going to throw it over there. And if you could all do the same, that will support you in being fully engaged in this presentation. You've chosen to take time today to spend it here, right? So another thing that helps with engagement and keeps you focused is if you share your camera and unblock your video. And also, for any of you who are not muted, please do mute your microphones. Thanks. And then if you do want to participate, I can call on you. You can either raise your hand through the participant feature, or you can participate through the chat. All right. We want to make this as engaging as possible. No question is a silly question. And yeah, every comment is going to be welcome. Okay, as long as it's a comment that comes with respect for myself and respect for others. So with all that being said, today's session is focused on LinkedIn networking strategies to help you learn how to approach your job search like a research project. And there are a few key areas that we're going to be diving into today. Before we go into that, my name is Eli Bohemond. And like Erica said, I am an international career coach. I am a leadership coach. But more than that, I'm an altruist. I am someone who really cares about others. I care about myself. I focus on my own self-worth and make sure that I speak to myself in a positive way. So one thing to always keep at top of mind is to just always monitor how you're talking to yourself about yourself, right? Because we have to be our biggest fans here. Otherwise, we're already screwing up the job search because we're getting in our own heads about, oh, we'll never get the job. I'm not enough. They're never going to hire me. There are so many other people. None of that. Okay. I am my biggest fan. Okay. And that's what I need you all to say to yourselves too. Not from like an egotistical point of view, right? Just from a self-love point of view. So with that being said, I'm also the co-founder of Your Career Strategy. And in a former life, I was a management consultant, and I consider myself to be a recovering management consultant because that career, although it was very cool, it really wasn't for me, right? I've had quite a few careers. I've changed careers now about 5 times. I've worked in Washington, D.C. as a management consultant. I've worked in the D.C. area as well as a sales and business development rep. I've moved to England and became a career advisor at an international business school. I've supported individuals from over 120 countries and landing jobs in 90 different countries around the world, right? And after that, I did a little bit of freelance coaching, did some work in Beirut in the Middle East with refugee education. And then I moved to the United States where I landed a job at WeWork as their director of career coaching for a coding boot camp, where we supported 3,000 plus students with 100 coaches that were on my team in landing their first jobs in tech after going through a boot camp program in software engineering, data science, UI/UX design, and cybersecurity. Now, I focus my attention on supporting individuals one-to-one and in a workshop setting and sharing all of these important skill sets and tools so that way you can also take ownership of your career and do so in a way that is intentional and meaningful. So that's just a little bit about who I am. We'll get to some questions towards the end. So Rena, I see your question and I will definitely get to it. And I'll save like 10 minutes at the end for this stuff, all right? So today we're gonna first discuss a little bit about what an employment target is, right? Do you have one, right? And how do you determine what this is? Additionally, we wanna start discussing where do you begin your research and how to conduct effective primary and secondary research using LinkedIn. Finally, we're gonna share an approach on how you can show value and expertise through your research. So when you get in front of target employers, you're able to really take that opportunity to the next level, resulting in a job offer. And I'll have a cool story to share. So let's get started. First, I want to ask you to take this poll with me, and you can do so by answering 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. All right. So, how did you last approach your job search? 1, did you have a concrete action plan to make the transition happen? 2, did you rely on your gut feeling regarding the right and wrong things to do? Or 3, did you throw caution to the wind and rely mainly on good luck and good fortune? So in the chat, look through these and let me know what you think. 1, 2, or 3. Okay. A lot of 2s, a couple 1s. Okay. All right. So at least no one's throwing caution to the wind and just kind of taking rash action when it comes to their job search. Gut feelings, for those of you who answer 2, are actually a really good thing to be able to tune into. However, I'd be curious if those are actually gut instincts that you're using or if you're overthinking, because the way our mind works kind of counteracts these gut instincts. We tend to rely so much on our logic and we say, well, if this, then that, if this, then that. We're basically like a living Excel spreadsheet running conditional statements, trying our best to determine every possible scenario. And based on that, we consider that sometimes a gut feeling, but really it's a logical decision, right? Which can be supportive, especially if we decide to utilize an action plan for this career transition. But an action plan has to be somewhat logical with hints of gut instinct, right? So what I want to do today is help you approach this job search in a way where you lean into what it is that you want and then structure an action plan so that way you can actually get what you want, which is one of the most difficult things to do in a job search. Most of the time, we're just waiting for opportunities that approach us. It's very reactive. We're not doing reactive today. Today, we're doing proactive. It puts you in control. And if you're anything like me, or if you're human, basically, you like to have control. You want to know that if I do these things, I'm going to get what I'm looking for versus, well, maybe I'll apply, I'll put some jobs out there or job applications out there, I'll submit my resume, I'll work with this recruiter. That's fine. But how about taking ownership of that and making sure that you're always the one that could follow up, reach out, and make sure that you're getting the responses that you're looking for so you can move your job search forward. The first thing we're going to discuss is an employment target. Now, if you aren't familiar with this definition, an employment target consists of 3 pillars. The first pillar is an industry, right? So that could be banking or finance, it could be fast moving consumer goods, it could be education. This is an industry which usually makes up organizations that can be found in that industry, right? So for education, you'll have tons of higher education institutions, you'll have education technology. So even within industries, you have sub industries. And these are becoming more and more detailed. So after the industry, you have function. And the function pillar is essentially the role that you're going to be working in. You'll either be like a salesperson, a human resource analyst, a general manager, an operations director, a finance or a senior accountant, right? As well as a variety. It could be a nurse, it could be a physician's assistant, it could be a variety of different roles that you might have, right? And then the geography is going to be the location which you choose to work in. And this can't be Western Europe, right? That's very broad. We want a specific country, city, ideally, right? Or if you're in the US, country, state, city. So this target is going to be really helpful because if we can define industry, function, geography, we're going to be able to more effectively conduct a job search. Think of it like if you were given a research paper and they're like, go ahead. We want you to write a research paper. It's kind of like, oh, I want you to just go out and get a job. Well, what do you need? You need a topic, right? And the best way to select a topic for your paper is to get super granular. Otherwise, you're going to be writing about a lot of things and it's going to get confusing. You're going to be doing so much added research than you have to. The more specific you can get about a topic, the more refined your research is going to be able to be. So this is basically like picking the theme of your research paper. What is my target industry and the target role within that industry and the location in which I want to work? If any of you know what your industry, function, and location is already as it relates to your job search, why don't you go ahead and throw that in the chat? What's the role that you want to work in, the title? What's the industry that you want to work in? Maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's manufacturing. And what geography ideally would you want to work in? And consider those geographies where if you don't have work authorization, you might have a good shot at getting it, right? So feel free to throw that in the chat. I'm not going to monitor it. It's just more so we can see what people have in mind. Right. Once you are able to craft and curate that target, then we need to start. Oh, Andre asks, what if there are several industries of interest? I'd say several industries of interest are okay, right? So if you're thinking, oh, I'd like to be in education, I'd also like to be potentially in tech, then it's very possible to create a resume based on a particular function that can speak to the skill sets that would be transferable within that role within different industries. So I'd say one industry is not super necessary. I think one function is super necessary, and actually one maximum two geographies, or one geography, one remote based role, right? Like the remote nature of that role could be interesting. But once you start expanding your search to 3, 4, 5, 6 different countries or regions, it starts to get very difficult to be effective in your research and your job search. So lots of great stuff here. So we have regional sales manager in manufacturing in Bonn, Germany, human resources coordinator in any given industry in France. It's excellent. Industry is automotive or manufacturing, artificial intelligence, machine learning engineer, speech and language technology in Paris. These are great, very specific. I like these. Photographer in MUFO in Krakow. Awesome. Software engineering. Again, try to narrow it down. Software engineering within this particular industry, think of a product or a service you might really like, right? And then from there, you can think about the location where you want to be. Do you want to stay close to home because you have friends and family there and that's important to you? Do you want to broaden your horizons and work somewhere else in Europe and they have a good cost of living or affordable cost of living, or it pays more than other places and that's what you're aiming for? Lots of things come into this decision, but one important thing to remember here is there is a degree of difficulty associated with each career change when you try to change one of these areas, okay? So for each area that you're trying to shift, if you try to make an industry change, but you keep your role and your geography the same, yes, you're only changing one of these areas, but this is still a career change at the end of the day. And this is called a single jump. For everyone, can you just please make sure you're muted? Uluwasi, if you could just make sure you're muted on the microphone. Thank you. So if you're changing one of these things, it's called a single jump, right? And that's actually one of the easier career transitions to make. If you try to shift just the geography, but you keep your function and industry the same, you try to shift the role and you keep your industry and geography the same, or you shift the industry, right? Now, it gets a little bit harder when you try to change two of these things. Let's say you're trying to change your geography. You want to go from, say, Germany to Spain, right? You speak Spanish, no big deal. And you want to go from management consulting to manufacturing, right? That's going to take a little bit more time to navigate, to network, to curate, to research, right, than shifting one of these things. And honestly, trying to switch all three, it's rare. It's rare to see this done effectively. So my suggestion to all of you is if you are in a job search right now and you're thinking of where you'd like to transition, one of the most effective things you could do is try to focus on shifting just one of these things first, because that's going to lead to a quicker time frame. Now, if you're very clear on doing a transition with two, well, you're going to have to really buckle down and use a lot of these strategies that we're going to be sharing with you today. So I do hope that this clarity around career change, as well as employment targets, is going to be helpful in helping us set the tone for what the heck are we going to be researching and starting to define so we can conduct effective networking, outreach, and all of these things, right? So moving forward, where do we start to really uncover where we can add value? And typically, let's say we get really focused on our target and we really understand the industry focus or the job that stands out to us, right? In this case, let's say it's a supply chain or logistics role in any particular industry. So doing a little bit of research, I can just go on Google. I can utilize any type of search engine and just learn what are the latest technologies in supply chain logistics. A quick search will show me that now, more than ever, I need to understand blockchain. I need to understand automation and process digitization, right? So once I understand these things, then I can start to look at my experience to date and say, okay, if this is what they're looking for, then I've done a few of these things in my previous roles. If I haven't, what you can do is start looking up, reading articles, starting to understand these concepts. So that way, if asked about them, you'll be prepared. Additionally, we want to do some outreach. So if you have defined your target and you know, for example, you want to be a software engineer at Spotify in Sweden, well, it's going to be pretty easy to start conducting a little bit of research to start determining, let me find a few people within those roles. And I'm going to show you how to do that shortly, okay? And then the last piece is you'll actually be surprised. There are amazing forums on Slack, Reddit, or even just industry organization virtual events and forums. Forums like this, where people are being invited to just learn. There are virtual career fairs. But more importantly than that, I think like the Slack and the Reddit channels are cool. So let me just click here. And if I go to Slack right here, there are actually 2,000 different Slack chat groups, right? There are groups for UX design, mixed methods, organizational design, lots of stuff in design, e-commerce space, games for gaming, video gaming, sports gaming, right? Product, if you're interested in product development, different languages, different tools. So I want you to take the initiative to try to find communities, online communities, where you can really start asking questions about your desired target. What is it that I need to know? What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing in this space? Now I'm looking to work at X company. Do you know anyone that works there? I'd love the chance to pick their brain a little bit about the day to day and what they're experiencing, what languages they use. I guess it just depends on the role and the function, right? So this is proactivity. This is you going in, taking initiative, trying to find resources and tools online to ask questions to people on the other side who are going to be able to give you details around challenges, culture, dynamics, what to expect, interview processes, right? So many questions are like, oh, I don't know. I don't know what it's like. What if it's like, let's take the what ifs out by speaking to these individuals, right? So another way we could go about this is if we go on LinkedIn and, let's say we're here on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you want to, you can feel free to please link in with me. I'm happy to take your questions virtually after the call, but if I don't get to them and you want to ask a question, you can ask me on LinkedIn, right? So let's take the Spotify example. So a few things we can do, right? So I'm going to go to Spotify as a company. Now, there are a few ways to search Spotify. So I can click on the company page. And if I go here, I can see that I'm connected to one person that works there. So that's cool. This might be a really good person to reach out to learn a little bit more, get an introduction to someone else. But what we'll see here is they have about 9,719 employees on LinkedIn. Now, this is a pretty good database. There's about 800 million people on LinkedIn. So that's a pretty solid number. And you could assume most people want to be present on this platform. So what I do is I click on the employees. And once I'm here, let's say I mentioned that I want to look for software engineers to speak to, right? So software engineer, if that's what they are called, it could be developer, right? So there are software engineers, plenty in New York. I'm curious though, if I wanted to speak to someone in Sweden. Perfect. So it's wild, but there are 410 results. That's a lot of software engineers. And it looks like there are a few people that I'm connected to that could put me in touch with some of these individuals, right? So this is pretty interesting. So you can even go and see who your second degree or first degree connections are, and you can show those results. Interesting. Nothing there. Let me just see, take out the first. So no second degree connections at this point. Which is odd because this is a second degree connection, so that's spotty with LinkedIn. But for example, let's just go in and say I want to talk to Emma. So I'm in her profile. There are a few different ways to start connecting with people, right? So traditionally, you can just hit connect. You can add a note. Most people don't add a note. Most people go in, they connect, and then they hit send. Why? They don't know you. What are you? If you don't know this person, why are they going to connect with someone they don't know? You're just hoping. You're giving away your power. We want you to keep your power. So you can add a note. This is where you want to be authentic. You want to say, Emma, I came across your profile on LinkedIn. Spotify is an impressive company and a product that I use every day. I'm a software engineer becoming one. I'd love to learn about your day-to-day in that role. Let's just start by connecting here. Then sign your name, send it. So that's one way to connect. Now, if you wanted to, what I usually do is I actually go and do a little bit of research, right? So this person was a coding coach, worked at IBM, went to Siena College, interesting, study abroad program, et cetera, et cetera, a math tutor, no languages here, French, so speaks French fluently, or a limited working proficiency, French and English. So it may not even be a Swedish national, but is based in Stockholm working at Spotify. That's interesting, right? So I noticed that you're currently working at Spotify. How did you get there? How did you end up in Stockholm? So it looks like Emma also has a website on Medium, so you could go there. You could take a look. She's interested in the French braid and different types of hairstyles. This might be pretty old, about a year or so. So I don't know, like you could, if you're like, oh, well, I'm also into braiding, that could be something you work in, right? Now, we don't want to go too deep here, but let's just say you're still not feeling like ready to reach out or connect, because that happens. So what we can do is go see the activity of this person. You can go look at their posts and not posting too often. But 5 months ago, she had a chat with this guy, Taylor, right? And it looks like when she shared this post, there's a lot more about what this is about. You can click on the post, learn a little bit more about decoding the technical interview. You could even use this and say, hey, I noticed that you gave a talk on decoding the interview 5 months ago. I missed that, and I would love to pick your brain a little bit on aspects of the technical interview and how you got your role at Spotify. Would you be open to a conversation? I just want to put it out there that I don't want you to be nervous or concerned that people are going to respond negatively to your outreach. Okay. Because if you think about yourself and if someone comes authentically to you with an interest in what it is that you do and how you do it, and they're thoughtful and they've done their research and they reach out and you can tell it's genuine, right? Your goal isn't to reach out and say, Emma, hey, can you help me get a job? That's not, you don't know her. Why is she going to help you get a job? Lead with curiosity. Emma, I noticed that 5 months ago, you gave this brilliant talk that I unfortunately missed on how to decode the technical interview. And you being at Spotify, I just assume that you're a master at this craft, right? A little bit of flattery never hurts. I would love to learn more from you. Maybe we can start by connecting here, right? So you could do that by commenting, and you could say at Emma, and then do a comment here. You don't have to be, I'm not connected with her. You don't have to be connected with her to tag her and comment. What this is going to do is no one else has commented. It's also going to alert her that you've been looking at her profile, also that you made a comment. All of a sudden, she may engage. She might like the comment. Then you could connect. Be like, hey, I noticed that. So there are so many different ways to go about connecting with people of interest. I don't want you to settle and say, oh man, I there are no jobs posted, or I just don't know anybody, or this is too hard. Yeah, it's going to be hard if you make it hard for yourself, if you keep it reactive. Sometimes you have to do the uncomfortable things, which after a little bit of practice, this is actually not that uncomfortable anymore. You'll find that you're going to have meaningful conversations with people around the world and connect safely, especially during a pandemic, with people virtually and still be able to position yourself to land interesting work, especially if you know what you're looking for and you have a target in mind. Because then they'll be like, well, what are you looking for? And you'll be able to speak to it, right? And I'm sure there are going to be plenty of sessions here throughout the 30 days that Europe Language Jobs is hosting here to support you in crafting a pitch and your resume and like all of these other tools that are going to really support you in having more effective conversations and follow-ups. But you need to just get started. It can't just be, oh, my LinkedIn isn't good enough, or my resume is not, my CV is not this. Excuses. Just start reaching out to people. Okay. Now, let's just say, for example, you went to the London School of Economics, right? So if you went to the London School of Economics, you can click here, or any school that you've been on. They actually have a schools page on LinkedIn for most universities. So you can click there, and a really cool feature that not too many people know about is actually this alumni feature. So this school has almost 220,000 alumni. Now, if you're like, I don't have anything in common, well, maybe where you studied is something you have in common. So you can go and you can click on the alumni tab here. When clicking on the alumni tab, you're going to have a database of almost 220,000 people that have all gone to London School of Economics, maybe as master's students, MBAs, bachelors, executive MBAs. But let's just take a look and see if there's anyone working at Spotify here. 39 people, right? And I'm just curious if anyone is living in Sweden. Perfect, 8. And we have some who are data scientists, senior data scientists, account executives. Um, so, I can then connect with individuals like this who would have gone to my institution, take a look at their experience, their data science programs, just kind of validate that they did go to LSE, they did coursework there. So not a true graduate of LSE, but still, you could also share, hey, I see you've done coursework at LSE. That was my alma mater. We're alums. Would love to talk to you a little bit about that experience, but also your transition through your careers, now landing as a data science in Spotify. Okay, you've just led through curiosity. You can search almost any company. You can search almost any position, any location for alumni from the universities that you were a participant of or a student at, right? So all of these little hacks are going to support you in landing, hopefully, interesting conversations that could lead to opportunities. So let's just go for another company. I want to show you something else. So I don't know. Let's see. Does someone want to volunteer a company that they're interested in and a position that they're targeting? If you do, please just share it in the chat. NatWest. Okay, Rena, NatWest, but what's the role? Data scientist. Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's see, the NatWest group. I guess it's going to be this company in banking here. All right. Click on NatWest. You're looking to be a data scientist, so I want to look at the employees that work here, right? Now I'm going to go to locations, just see, Manchester area. Let's take a look at the filters, and you want to pull out the title of, just see data. Let's just type in data, see what comes up. So I see some data engineers, right, based in Manchester. Not many, but enough, right? So Chandrima Day might be an interesting person to reach out to because she's a lead data engineer, right? So she's been a data engineer at a few other areas, Accenture for a little while as well, more than a little while, about 5 years, right? So very interesting background experience. You can tell by 104 connections, she's probably not on LinkedIn that often. So because I understand this, right? Because I understand that, she has no activity, she doesn't have a lot of connections, she's probably not spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, no email address shared. Well, maybe there's a way for us to connect with her outside of LinkedIn. So there's actually this cool tool called Sales QL. It's a browser extension for Chrome. So if you use Google Chrome, it's only going to work on Google Chrome. You would download Sales QL as a browser extension. And what it's going to do is when you're on someone's page, it's going to scrape their LinkedIn profile. So as a data scientist, you might find this interesting, right? And it's going to give us email addresses, right? So one could be chandrima.d@natwest.com. So that's her main work, or this might be her private one. It says Ymail. I'm not familiar with that. And then there are tools out there online where you could test email addresses to see if they're valid, right, before you send anything. Another tool you could use is for validation is hunter.io. Okay. Hunter.io is going to, let's just say you're looking at natwest.com. You put the company in and it's going to show you first name dot last name at natwest.com is the most common source or common pattern for that email address. So when we looked up, when we looked up Chandrima's, it was first name dot last name at natwest.com. So that's probably an accurate email address. So you could go ahead, use that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that you, through this presentation, have some templates that you could use to reach out and follow up with these individuals, because the goal is to win a networking meeting, to learn more about what her role is like at NatWest. What is it that she does day in and day out? What's the culture like there? How has she navigated as a data scientist through a consulting organization like Accenture and then to all these other firms to find herself now at NatWest in Manchester? Any tips for someone who's trying to do the same, right? That's all going to be really interesting and super helpful. So let's go back to the presentation. So now that I've showed you how to utilize LinkedIn as a networking tool, as a true database, right? LinkedIn is a database of people you can just use it to like post articles and like things and comments a little bit, but let's be deliberate about how we use it. Let's use it to actually connect because we want to link in with other people. That's why it's called what it is. It's supposed to be a networking platform. So let's network with it, right? So these are a few questions or email templates rather that you can use to win emails and then follow up if you don't get a response. Because to be honest, I'll share a quick story. I had someone, when I was working in England, I was a career coach at a university and a career coach at an international coaching firm at the same time. And someone found that profile interesting. They were thinking of getting into coaching. So they reached out to me. I didn't respond to the first outreach on LinkedIn. And then they found my email and tried me there. I was like, okay, interesting. So I was pretty busy juggling 2 jobs. So I didn't follow up. She followed up 4 times. Okay. At that point, I was like, okay, this person's serious. Let me take a look at her profile. I looked at her profile. I reached out. I followed up. We set an appointment. On the day of our appointment, this contact, she said, "Oh, sorry, I have to babysit last minute. Is it possible to push our meeting?" At this point, I was like, forget this person. I cannot believe this. Right. So I'm like, no, you know what? I'm just not going to be able to meet going forward. Right. So I was a little bit annoyed. But she apologized and she shared a piece of art that she's done. She was a spoken word poet. I don't know if it was dumb luck, but I love spoken word. And actually, she was very talented. So I was so inspired by her poetry that I reached out again and I said, all right, there's this poetry event in England, in London, on this date. If you're free, meet me there. We can meet, we can watch poetry, and we can network. That's what ended up happening. And from there, she ended up getting a job with the international coaching firm I was coaching with. She ended up interviewing with the school that I was with. We ended up sharing clients and sending referrals, all from a few emails that went out. I would have never known her. And now she's a good friend. You can change the course of your possible opportunities of your life just from a freaking outreach email. What? Do it. Don't be afraid to do this stuff. You could change your life. It's amazing. But you have to do it with the right intention, the intention to be curious, the intention to grow. Okay? Now I'm on my soapbox. I'm here, you know, speaking quite passionately about this, but it's because I've worked with over 4,000 people navigating these processes. The people who use these techniques, they get jobs fast. The people who don't, they struggle. They struggle for like 8 months, 12 months, and still aren't in the role that is ideal for them. You get to choose what you want. So if you know your theme, your target, your function, your industry, your geography, you know the organization, you start talking to these people, you think about, oh, what do I enjoy? What are some products and services I like? Um, I love Adidas shoes. I'd love to work for Adidas. Or I love, you know, graphic design. I've always been using like Photoshop, Illustrator. Well, you could work at Adobe Systems. You got to look at your interests and say, what is it that I like? And by understanding these things, you start to get ideas about different organizations that could be a good fit. And the conversation becomes easier because you're like, oh, I always use this tool. This is what I love about it. This is what I love about this, right? So just a few tips. I hope that that's been helpful. Um, Additionally, just reaching out isn't enough. Let's say that you're trying to break into a new field. And let's say that field is data science, to stay on that topic. So your background, your experience may not be data science focused. You're like, well, why would anyone want to talk to me? Well, it depends. What are you sharing, right? So make sure that the posts that you're sharing are related to topics that others in that field would find interesting. You can quickly start a blog. I mean, you could literally just use LinkedIn, go on your homepage, click on write article, and write it under yourself. And then all of a sudden, you just have a blog that can be published on LinkedIn, which would then be notified to everyone who is connected with you. Hey, I just completed this blog. If you click that privacy setting, and then people are going to see, you could feature this on your profile, right? So on your profile, there are areas where you can actually feature posts. You could feature articles. I used to feature a lot more articles. but you can start to look like a data science. You could feature, if you're on GitHub, for example, and you are creating projects in data science and software engineering and UIX design, right? You have a portfolio. You can make that very visible right here at the top of your LinkedIn profile. Well, that's pretty cool. It keeps you relevant, because when people see that you're relevant, they're going to understand, oh, that's pretty cool. I like your project. I like what you did there. Or I like the topic that you discussed in this particular piece that you wrote, right? And if you're doing research and studying this stuff anyway, instead of just studying it, take notes, use those notes, write a short blog, and publish it. The key theme of all of the stuff I'm talking about here is effort. It's effort, which requires motivation, which requires love for yourself, patience with yourself, and also a desire to really understand what it is that you want. Because if you know what you want, you're going to be motivated to get it. And if you're having difficulty and lacking motivation, then you need a partner, whether it's an accountability buddy or someone like me, like a career coach. It doesn't have to be me, of course. There are plenty of coaches, especially in the Europe language jobs ecosystem, but someone that can hold you accountable and give you the tools and the strategies you need to figure out what you want so you can go get it and stick to the actions, because that's the hardest part. Second, like we discussed, you can share these articles and engage through comments and messages on social media. Now, we talked about LinkedIn, but if the person that you like might be an interior designer and they have a huge following on Instagram, well, you can go on Instagram. You could start to comment in there, tagging them in things, engaging with their stories. They start seeing your name. Then you start reaching out through another medium. Well, all of a sudden, you have a meeting with someone that you never thought you were going to get a meeting with. And finally, there's this concept of a value added project. And instead of telling you what that is, I'm going to share a story with you to tell you about how to create one of these projects. So this individual here is Sibel, and she came to me because she was wanting to make a shift in her role. She wanted to get a promotion while at the same time shifting more into aerospace contracting, right, and partnerships. So we started to look at her work, and she started to utilize this approach of conducting detailed research on a few different companies. One of the companies she chose was Virgin Galactic, right? Really interesting company. So doing that research, she was able to really find interesting things about that company. And what she did was she found a few people. She started to have conversations with people who weren't the hiring manager for that role. And she started to ask them, hey, what are some challenges that you're experiencing when it relates to partnerships, when you're trying to grow your brand, when you're trying to think about expansion, when you're trying to think about relationships and lobbying and policy? She got like 5 pages of notes of information from these individuals. She basically put together a 1-page proposal. Then she reached out to the hiring manager. She ended up getting a meeting with them too, because it was an introduction from someone else that she had met. During that conversation, she mentioned like, hey, I understand that this might be where you're at. Is that accurate? He's like, yeah, actually, that's pretty close. She's like, well, I took some time to really do some digging and I put together this short proposal of possible solutions. Can I share that with you? She shared her screen, shared it right on the call, followed up with an email, sent it along. The role wasn't even available. She didn't even know if there was a job available. They ended up choosing to hire her for a role that was a higher level at 40% more than what she was making, just because she showed up with a project that made sense because she put in the effort and the initiative up front. This stuff happens, but it doesn't just happen to people sitting around hoping that it happens to them. It happens to doers, people who take action, people who go out and conduct the meetings and network and go on LinkedIn and engage and develop their relationships. Whether you work in sales or you're just trying to get a job, same thing. You have to cold call, you have to develop relationships, you can use your warm network, you can ask for introductions, but all of this is going to support you in being able to land a job faster and land a job that's more aligned with what you want. So let's end there. How about, we celebrate these learnings, and if you want, you can share something that you took away from today's session in the chat. And as you're doing that, I'm going to open it up to some questions. Additionally, there is a complimentary resource that I'd like to share, and we can include this. Maybe Erica, we could just post this in the chat as well. But this is a complimentary mock interview guide, right? Or a complimentary interview guide. It's going to comprehensively support you in preparing for any aspect of an interview. And there are lots of tools, recordings, templates, things that you could use right from here, and it's all for free. And that's my gift to you guys. So, yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. And if you would like, how about you go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Hey, don't be shy. Any question is beneficial here. Maria?
Hello.
Yes.
I'm curious to know more about this meeting.
Nice. So this meeting, how? Like anything in particular as it relates to something we talked about here today?
I'm interested in knowing about the strategy.
Got it. So maybe if you get a meeting, what type of strategy do you have to, host an effective meeting with that person? Is it something like that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So when you win a networking meeting with somebody that is of interest, right? It's going to be important that you take some time to think of a few questions that you might like to ask them. Some of these questions could be, what are some interesting projects that you're working on? What are, I guess, like what have you learned from your time there? You've been at the company for 3 years, and what makes you want to stay there? So there are a list of different types of questions. You could do your research on their LinkedIn and based on your research, find interesting aspects of what it is that they have done, and bring that into the conversation. Now, a few important things. If you set a time frame and you say, hey, I would like to meet for 30 minutes, then make sure you stick to the time that you scheduled for that meeting, okay? So you set a meeting for 30 minutes, you better keep your eye on the clock and make sure that's the time frame. Typically, once the meeting starts, you exchange pleasantries. Say, it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking this time. And from there, tell them a little bit about why you reached out and then who you are, right? So you need to work on your pitch. What's the most important thing they need to know about you, right? What is it that you're curious about learning about them? And then pass it off to them. In this meeting, you want to be talking 20% of the time, and you want to ask good questions to have them talking 80% of the time. And then through this networking meeting, you will slowly start to understand who they are, what their needs are, and hopefully lead to a follow-up email where you might be able to ask them to keep in touch. You can ask them, you can follow up in a few months just to see how they're doing, and share a little bit about your journey and your successes as you navigate your job search. So a variety of ways to conduct these meetings, plenty of resources online. And, I might even have like a few LinkedIn posts recently about this particular topic. So you can always check out my LinkedIn, check out my articles, and from there are a bunch of things. So, so thank you, Maria. Hopefully I answered your question. Ooh, let's see. It looks here that we have Wendy says, I don't work a lot with social media. What is the most important thing to start with? LinkedIn. All right. So LinkedIn, you go on linkedin.com, you just create your profile. There are some amazing resources online that help you understand how to take a good picture, how to set up a background image, how to think of your headline and your title. And actually, we have a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel for your career strategy where you can learn a formula on how to structure a headline, learn how to build an about section. But what you have to remember, Wendy, is this is your profile. You're not writing in the third person, you're writing about you. And you're positioning yourself for what it is that you want. So if you currently work at a company and you put, well, I'm this position at this company as your headline, that's not going to be very effective. I'll give you an example of a good headline real quick. Since we're here, we got the time, right? So this individual is trying to become a user experience product designer. So someone like this, if I see their profile here and I see they're a UX product designer, design sprint facilitator, 11 years experience, and they've optimized the experience for 50,000 plus customers, that's a strong headline, versus let's just see like consultant and people, anyone who's just like, senior consultant at Deloitte, senior consultant at Deloitte, senior consultant at, it's just like, there's nothing differentiating you, right? This is your profile. Because when I write this name, what I see first here, especially if recruiters are looking, they're going to see, is this person relevant to the job I'm looking for, right? Just from the headline. Also, if they're searching on the back end from an applicant tracking system point of view, people search based on keywords in LinkedIn the same way they would, like a tool would search your resume for keywords on the back end. So really what you want to do is make sure that your profile is authentic to you and it's optimized. So that way the target that you're aiming for, it shows up here in the words that you use and how you speak. So that would be the advice I have on how to really kick things off. Cool. Let's see. Sam, I am standing as I present. I have a standing desk and I find it better to speak. Also, there is a bed back here and that is not the most professional thing when giving a workshop, but I don't care. It's a guest room. So I'll show you, but I find that it gives a little bit more energy and I can, move around a little bit more freely. So yes, let's see here. Pravathi. Do you have any tips or strategies for a job hunt in a country where I'm still learning to speak the local language? So in France, learning French. Okay. So that's tough. I'd say particularly in France because they are a little bit about the French language in France. I also tried to work in France with intermediate French and I got laughed at. That's not to say it's impossible. There are national organizations that have headquarters in Paris or other parts of France. There are ways to look for organizations where you might be working with companies or regions where they do speak your language. And leveraging that, you might be able to then source potential opportunities where intermediate French is fine, as long as you can read, write, and proficiently and professionally in English and or this other language. Let's say you're working in Latin America, like your clients are Latin America, but you're based in Paris and you speak Spanish and Portuguese. That's going to be super helpful. And you could find a role based in Paris and still do that work, right? So I would say that certain countries, particularly France, I would just double down on language acquisition. Make sure you're spending a lot of time with people who are speaking French. And if you find yourself, on the phone speaking in your more comfortable language, get yourself out of these situations and throw yourself into full immersion, because that's going to be one of the best ways to localize the language. So Yarrow, good to see you or hear you here. How valuable is sharing a meeting agenda ahead of time, your top questions in order to get the most out of the meeting time? It's actually a good approach. It just depends on, yeah, I mean, you could put together an agenda, you could include it in the description in the calendar invite, and you could let them know, hey, in the description, I added the agenda, a few questions I've been thinking about, just so you're not surprised by anything I ask. And you could take it from there. However, it's not necessary. I think if you prepare ahead of time and you go into the conversation, it feels a little bit more natural. Some people will enjoy an agenda, others will just kind of want to go off of the cuff. So just kind of ad hoc. But it never hurts. It shows a different level of professionalism and the points you want to hit. So that way, if you don't get to a point, you could bring it up in your follow-up. Let's see. Let's see. Actually, Fawaz, working in Germany with intermediate German, that's actually not too much of a problem comparatively to France. Germany is a little bit more open to English as a primary language for a lot of business transactions, not in every single role, but I have a few clients right now who are Italian, who do not speak German, who are working in Berlin, and they're working full time and have been for a few years, and they're not looking to acquire the German language. So I think in Germany, there is a little bit more leniency that you'll be able to pull up without the German language. These are all really great questions for Europe language jobs here, because you're going to be able to help a lot of people who are trying to navigate in. Let's see. All right. I mean, there are still a few more questions, but I know we're running short on time. We have about 1 minute left. So for all of you who asked, yes, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want, I'm happy to answer some light questions on LinkedIn. I do sometimes offer free coaching calls for individuals. That's like once every 2 months. I'll open it up to about 10 free coaching calls every 2 months. And if you are following me on LinkedIn, you'll see that. You can reach out and we can have a brilliant conversation. So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this and found a lot of value in it. Finding value is not enough. Take an action. What is one thing you could do today with something you've learned that you can start applying? If you have 5 minutes after this session, great, do it then. If you don't, take a minute after the session and block time on your calendar to say, okay, now I'm going to go and start researching my target or researching this company and start following up and doing the outreach. Start the research process. It's not going to just happen. All right. Be proactive.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Eli. Thank you for enlightening us, as usual, with all of your knowledge, your amazing tips. We were even here writing stuff down as well as you were going. Very, very useful. Definitely, I'm sure that everyone is able to take more than one thing home. For those who were having issues listening, we recorded a webinar and we will be also posting on YouTube. Thank you so much for the questions. As Eli said, you can reach out to him through LinkedIn. Also, we shared your website, Eli. We shared it on the messages as well. But we will also be sending an email to all of the participants with the link and everything again. So in case you guys missed anything. There were a bunch of questions for those who don't speak native languages and you are in a specific country where you don't speak that language. So we do actually Europe language jobs, as Victoria was saying in the introduction, like Eli was also mentioning. We offer so many options for jobs in Europe for those who don't speak specific languages and want to work with their native ones. And so here is where you can find all of them. Also, we would like you guys to know that if you have more questions, you can also send it to our TikTok account. We are running mini lives and we're answering all of them there. And we do have also some other events coming up. So this Friday, October 22nd at 4 o'clock, we do have a TikTok live with Caitlin. Also on Friday at 7 p.m., we have a workshop, Toolkit for Successful Job Hunt. And the following Monday, we have another workshop with Eli as well. So if you enjoyed this session today, you're gonna love it, the one on Monday. So stay tuned. It's gonna be at 5 o'clock as well. You can also find it through Eventbrite. And it's the key to effective interviewing, establishing relevant narratives. So we definitely look forward to seeing you guys there as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. See you all later.